Today we're going to check out the brand new OnePlus 3, one of the most anticipated phones of the year. The OnePlus 3 really stands out for flagship design and specs, but mid-range pricing at $399. And this time, no invite system. You can buy this right now from their store, and I'll leave that linked in the description below. It's also available in two colors, graphite as we have here, and soft gold, which is coming later. Now before we get to the phone itself, let's get to the unboxing, and it's kind of a special one this time because they sent it in this huge PR kit, which includes many of the accessories that are available for the OnePlus 3 on the store. We also get this pamphlet which highlights all of the features and specs of the OnePlus 3, and it's really nice to have this for the review. So once we slide open the box, you can see we have lots of goodies to take a look at, including the OnePlus 3 at the center. But first, let's take a look at the cases. So we have a lot of case options that are available for the OnePlus 3. That includes the sandstone texture case. That case sort of picks up where the previous generation phones left off. Because we have an all-metal phone this time, we have to put this case on if you like that sandstone texture from the previous generation. Another accessory is the car charger, and this works with the dash charging system. So if you want high-speed charging in your car, you have this accessory as an option. Now the accessory itself is actually really nicely designed. It has this knurled metal design, very similar to a knob inside a high-end car, so it sort of matches. So it's not just a cheap accessory. It also comes with a dash compatible charging cable. You have to remember, in order to use dash, you have to use compatible cables and chargers. Also included is the OnePlus Loop VR. So this is a VR headset specifically designed for the OnePlus 3. So it's a very nice headset. The phone basically just slots in the front of the headset, and you can use the adjustable straps to mount it to your face, and it does have a nice padded surface, so it's comfortable to wear. And lastly, let's get to the OnePlus 3 itself, which also has really nice packaging. It's all white and red. So when you lift open the box, you can see the phone front and center on this very nice plastic tray. So once we lift the phone off the tray, you can see that inside we have some paperwork. Now once we slide that tray out, we'll find a SIM ejection tool toward the bottom. We'll also find some paperwork, which includes a user guide and user manual, and you also find a set of stickers, which is kind of nice. Now underneath this pamphlet, we'll find all of the accessories, and behind this pamphlet, we'll actually find a message from the CEO, and if you want to read this, you can go ahead and pause the screen. Now a real standout feature of the OnePlus 3 is the dash charging system, and this charging brick is a big part of it. So although it's larger than a standard charger, it does most of the power management, which means the heat that's generated by charging doesn't make it to the phone itself. So the phone stays really cool. It actually works very effectively. Now this rapid charging system can actually charge this 3,000 milliamp hour battery to 60% in only 30 minutes. And because the phone doesn't overheat, the phone doesn't have to dial back charging speed when you're actually using it, especially when you're gaming. So it can continue rapidly charging your phone even if you're using it. Now you can still charge your phone using standard USB-C power adapters, but you won't get rapid charging. Now the phone does indicate whether you're charging rapidly or not, and you'll see that indicated on the lock screen or with a lightning icon in the status bar. Now getting back to the phone, there is a small sticker along the back which tells you about the dual SIM setup in this phone. We also have a sticker with our IMEI and serial number information that we can peel off, and once we do, the phone is completely free of any regulatory or serial number markings, so it's a really nice clean design. So taking a close look at the OnePlus 3, the design is pretty familiar. It looks like a lot of other phones sort of combined together, but it's a really nice looking design, especially for this price. Now of course it's all aluminum, and we do have those antenna stripes at the top and bottom. The design itself kind of a combination of rounded edges and sharp creases, which creates a really nice looking design overall. Now the phone is only 7.35 millimeters thick, but along the sides you'll notice that it sort of curves in, which gives you a narrower grip. We've seen this design from other phones like Samsung. Now along the right side of the phone, we'll find a sleep-wake power button, and just above that we'll find our dual nano SIM tray. When you eject this for the first time, you'll see that we have these little nano SIM inserts which you can pop out and then install your own SIM. And of course, these SIMs are assignable under settings. Unfortunately, there is no micro SD card slot in here, but we do get 64 gigs of internal storage standard, which is great at this price. Along the left side, we'll find a volume rocker and a feature returning from the OnePlus 2, which is the alert slider. So this is sort of a 3-position slider that allows you to select whether you want all of your notifications, only your priority notifications, or if you just want to mute everything, and that's customizable under settings. Now toward the top of the phone you won't find anything at all. Very clean design, but if you look at the bottom you'll find your speaker, USB-C connector, headphone jack, and microphone, in addition to screws at either side. In terms of speaker quality, it's somewhat similar to the iPhone, which is to say it's a really good speaker, although it'd be nice if we had front-facing stereo speakers, but it's loud and clear without distortion, so it doesn't sound too tinny, doesn't sound too hollow, or too muffled. So taking a look at the back of the phone, very clean design, and we do have NFC hidden back here, so NFC finally returns, which we lost with the OnePlus 2. Toward the top, if you look at the antenna stripe at the center, we'll find our microphone, and of course right below that protruding now is a 16 megapixel camera with an f2.0 aperture. It can also record in 4K video with optical image stabilization, and right below that we'll find an LED flash. So this is a camera with specs that really keep up with flagship smartphones, and we're going to test that out in this video. Now getting to the front of the phone, the first thing you'll notice right away is that we have a pre-installed screen shield, and if you don't want it, you can peel this off, but I left it on for the purposes of this video, so it might be a visual distraction, but just remember, it can be taken off. Now on the front of the phone, we have this Corning Gorilla Glass 4 cover glass, which wraps around the edges, and this combines with a very narrow bezel to create an effect that makes the display look like it's sort of floating above the phone. A really nice thin bezel creates a nice compact phone, and generally speaking, it's a really attractive design that feels great in the hand because all these surfaces are nice, smooth, and rounded. Now before we talk about the display, let's get to the things that are around it. So toward the top, we have an LED notification light. We also have our ambient light sensor and proximity sensor in addition to our earpiece. We also have our 8 megapixel front-facing camera, which does have an f2.0 aperture. Down below, we'll find our home button, which is also a fingerprint scanner, which is faster than ever. It's a really quick fingerprint scanner. Excellent feature that works reliably. And beside it, we'll find our backlit capacitive Android navigation keys, which are nondescript. They're basically just dots because they're programmable. Now, you have to keep in mind that the home button is capacitive, so it's not a physical click, it's just a tap. Now getting to the display, this is a 5.5-inch 1080p Optic AMOLED display. So 1080p is kind of a bad word right now because a lot of people expect Quad HD for flagship specs. But you have to keep in mind that the iPhone 6s Plus also has a 1080p display, 5.5 inches, and both phones look fantastic. They have great displays and they're very sharp and clear, and you're definitely not going to see the pixels unless you basically bring the phone to your eyes. And that's where it might become a problem, and that's if you're using this with VR. VR obviously can benefit from higher resolution displays, again because the display is right in front of your face. But generally speaking, this is a fantastic display with bright, clear whites, which do shift a little toward the blue side compared to something like an LCD screen or something like Samsung's displays. But it's a really good looking display with bright, vivid colors, deep blacks, great off-axis viewing angles, and it's just a nice bright display. Now they call this an optic display, and that's because we have a dual polarizing layer, which means that this display remains very visible outdoors in external lighting conditions. So instead of washing out the display, external light really has no effect. You can still see this clearly. So in terms of our specs, again, this is a 2016 flagship phone. So of course we have a Snapdragon 820 clocked at 2.2 gigahertz. Not common is 6 gigs of RAM. This is one of the first phones to get that much RAM, which provides a lot of breathing room. We also get 64 gigs of onboard storage standard. It's not expandable, but this is also faster storage. So this is UFS 2.0 technology, which moves data 3 times faster than more common eMMC 5.1 storage. So of course this delivers excellent Geekbench scores, around 2400 on the single core score and almost 5500 on the multi-core score. That more than doubles the single core score of the previous generation. And it brings the single core score pretty close to the iPhone 6s Plus, and of course the multi-core score well clears it. So in terms of day-to-day performance, again we have Android 6.0 with a very light skin, and with a 1080p display and all this processing power, this phone just flies through its operating system. So it's a very smooth operating phone. You're able to get around really quickly, and generally speaking, it's a really pleasant experience, and I really enjoy using this phone. However, when it comes to RAM, there is some controversy here, and that's because the RAM management system seems to be ignoring all the RAM it has available to itself. So that means it's not suspending apps as well as you would expect it to. So it's reloading apps more frequently than you expect when you recall them. Ideally, we should see 10 plus apps in full suspension so you can immediately recall them when you need them. But unfortunately, that's not happening here. We're seeing about 5 apps in full suspension, and then it reloads everything else. OnePlus 3 says they're doing this to preserve battery life, and that's a more important factor to consider than suspending background apps that you may not be using in the first place. In terms of battery performance, we have a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty standard for phones around this size, and it delivers pretty standard results. I'm seeing almost about 4.5 hours of on-screen time at maximum brightness in my benchmark testing. So in terms of camera quality, with 60 megapixels, again, you have a lot of resolution to work with, and if you have plenty of light, you see a lot of detail that's very crisp and clear with good color reproduction. My only complaint is that it tends to be a little on the overexposed side, but generally speaking, it's pretty standard stuff for flagship smartphones. Now, where things sort of soften here is when you're in low light conditions with an f2.0 aperture. You don't quite have as much light coming into the camera as you might have have with an f1.7 or 1.8 aperture like we're seeing with some other flagship smartphones. The other issue is that the image processor in here is very aggressive, so it tends to soften a lot of detail in order to mitigate the noise that comes with 60 megapixel sensors and low light. Now, the good thing about an f2.0 aperture is that the camera spends less time focusing, so you're able to find focus a little more easily and more reliably. Now, in terms of extremely low light performance, it's actually very good. So we see a good amount of detail. It's nice and crisp without being too noisy. It's not overexposed where things are blown out. So it's just about right. So you're able to see enough detail, and color accuracy is also good, so it doesn't look washed out. So although you can probably find cameras with better sensitivity, this one is pretty good overall. Now, when we get to video, we have 4K and optical image stabilization. Unfortunately, handheld video looks pretty shaky, so it's definitely not up to snuff with other flagship smartphones, which usually can do a much better job in terms of stabilizing video. The other issue is that exposure compensation tends to hunt around abruptly, so when it adjusts for exposure, it really does look pretty unnatural. That's also true of continuous autofocusing, which tends to hunt around unnaturally. Another issue I've noticed with this camera is that it's prone to pixelation or artifacts during recording, especially with 4K. So there may be some performance issues while recording 4K, and hopefully this will be improved with software updates.